So it's important for us to know that here at Unity North, we are always, in the movement, we're always looking for a reason to celebrate oneness. Look around the room. There's a reason to celebrate oneness that's sitting next to you. To celebrate, to recognize, and to call forth unity. Thus, our namesake. Yes? And that's a spiritual thing. We always talk about unity from a spiritual standpoint because spiritually, there's only one of us in the room. Now, it looks like there's a whole bunch of us, but the reality is our human existence is also a portal to recognize the oneness. You think so? It's a spiritual truth, but there are mirrors. Everyone around you is a mirror to remind us that actually the physical existence, the physical experience is also an opportunity to recognize oneness. Anybody have experiences on the earth that you think you're the only one who's had that experience? Well, the reality, there's probably 50 people in the room who've had the same exact experience, and we find each other through the portal of that common shared pain, or that common shared grief, that common shared understanding that through it all, it is well. I remind you, and you remind me. That's the beauty of community, yes? And sometimes the human existence, it's really benign things. Things that we don't think about. Just ridiculous, silly little things that we're all going through that connect us and have the opportunity to connect us. To prove my point, what is the reaction in the room? What are the thoughts in the room when I say the word IKEA? And for those who are still wondering why there's laughter in the room, let me add a few more words to see if we can't get a symbol of oneness right here in this room. And the word IKEA followed with some assembly required. It's a reality. We all have that existence. You ever sat on the floor going, there are too many pieces, there aren't enough screws, and everything's wrong with the world, trying to put together a piece of IKEA furniture. We share that. All the pieces look alike, but they aren't. They aren't the same. Look around the room. We all look similar. Human beings walking the face of the planet, but we are all so uniquely different, and we celebrate that here. But sometimes putting the piece of the puzzle together, putting the piece of furniture together can be complex because we are so uniquely different. It's a blessing, and sometimes, well, it makes life interesting, if you will. The instructions, ever get those instructions out of the box, and it looks like it's written by a second-grade masochist? Well, if I ever get my hands on the kid who wrote these instructions, the reality, ever think it's all done and something is backward? How did that one leg get on backwards? And then there's a process of deassembling, taking it apart, starting all over again because one piece fits into the other. And you can't move this one and turn it around unless you move this piece. It's a wonderfully peaceful opportunity, isn't it? Or is it? Well, it depends. Sometimes I'm not at my ministerial best when I'm putting together a piece of IKEA furniture. And there's nothing worse than getting to the end. I know that we share this. This is oneness. How can there be 3 screws left? There's no hole to put them in. How come I have 4 extra nuts? We ask that question a lot at Unity North. How come we have 4 extra nuts in the room? And you know who you are, yes? So we go back to square one, we remake, we disassemble, and we start over. We have that similar emotion and that similar experience. Put that on hold for a second, but we're going to come back to it. For the month of July, our topic has been freedom. We've been celebrating the freedom of our nation, the freedom of our community. It's a beautiful thing. Yes, the freedom to be, the freedom to express, the freedom of religion, the freedom of speech, and the freedom of thought. Today is the freedom to gather together. The freedom to gather together. The First Amendment to the Constitution and the Bill of Rights is the freedom to assemble. But there's a word up there. The freedom to gather together peaceably. I think perhaps we have forgotten that. Not in our churches, we've forgotten it on the street, but we gather together, and when we hear that there's going to be an assembly going on, we think it's going to be a rally. And somebody's going to get hurt, and some ugly words are going to be shared. And you think in churches that wouldn't happen, but it happens in churches too. So this is a reminder that there is a responsibility with the freedom of assembly as well as a blessing. Breathe that in for a second. The freedom to gather together peacefully And we remember today that for sustained freedom of assembly, some assembly is required. So many people are coming into spiritual organizations like ours, and they think, oh, this is great, this is wonderful, I don't have to do anything. They're looky-loos, I call them, checking us out, but they don't ever jump in and get involved. The freedom of assembly comes with a responsibility to be part of the assembly, to be a part of bringing together, of uniting together, of looking and creating and recognizing and celebrating oneness when we find it, having the eyes of the Christ to find oneness, the ears of the Buddha to hear oneness, the spirit of Muhammad, the spirit of Abraham to look for the good even when it is dark outside. Through it all, it is well. Say that with me. Through it all, it is well. Spiritual community is very much like that. And spiritual community is much like a piece of equipment ordered from IKEA. Go with me, bear with me on the metaphor. I had a lot of fun playing with this week. Number one, what's the first step? The first step, you've got to search and you've got to find. I want a new piece of furniture in the house. I want something shiny and new and great and wonderful. So I go online and I search IKEA and I find it. You know that there are people looking for us right now. They are looking. They don't believe that it exists in Cobb County or in Georgia, that we exist right smack dab here in the middle of Cobb County, and they're looking for us. They're going online. Maybe you're finding us today. Welcome. We're glad you found us. Welcome to the puzzle. Welcome to IKEA. This spiritual assembly, how many people remember the first time you came in? You were looking for something different, something that you'd never heard before, and you realized, wow, there's people that think like I do. There's people that have the same mindset that I do. And maybe I'm not such a screwball or a nut or a wacko, or at least I found my community of screwballs, wackos, and nuts. And that's the first part of a process, to order a piece of furniture or to order a spiritual assembly. We've all did it. You had to look first to find us before you found us. Step number two, you had to order it. You have to order it online. These days, I don't hardly go to stores anymore. I'm not necessarily a good American. I'm going online and I'm ordering a piece of furniture, not from IKEA, but don't tell. But you have to order it and you have to invest in it. You have to put an outlay of cash. There's an energy exchange. In order for the good to come to you, you have to put some energy out. It takes time. It takes time and diligence and searching. In the case of a spiritual assembly, prayer is our investment. I am praying for something greater in the community I'm in or the community I'm seeking. I'm meditating about what is possible in this world. There has to be something greater than this. We look at the news, we look at the world, we look at the divisiveness, and we pray, God, let there be something better than this. And that's part of the process. I want a new dining room set. Let me go look onto IKEA and make the order. And it requires an investment of time and talent. Nobody is here without the investment of your time and your talent. We'll get into the energy of the investment of money a little bit later, because that's usually when people get off the train. No, I'm not going to do that. Third thing, how about when that package shows up at your front door? You know that feeling? We all share that. There's oneness. There's a package, and those of us who order a lot, we don't know what's in the package. We check to make sure it's not ticking. But the reality is, oh my gosh, there's a box at the front door, and it's like the Wells Fargo wagon is coming down the road. Santa Claus has come, and there's a box on my front porch, and it arrives. Many of you arrived in this community after praying for something like this. The spiritual assembly that was as free as this community is. Because let me tell you, I can point to 10 different places around us where you are not spiritually free. They tell you what to think, how to think, when to think it, where to think it. No, we say think and share and be present. Do we take that for granted sometimes? Sometimes. It is an incredible blessing. So it shows up, and it's like Christmas. It's fresh, and it's new. How many remember the honeymoon period of finding this idea that we belong to each other? That honeymoon period, the first time somebody told you, you are so powerful that you can create heaven on earth. Go back and remember the first time that happened. That's part of the process, and one that maybe has been forgotten. That excitement like a kid, the awe and the wonder. You must become like a child again to enter that kingdom of heaven. The romantic period, the honeymoon period, doesn't have to end, but somehow it does. And that usually is because the next step 4, the box, we look at the box and it says, some assembly required. And we pause before we open it up. Oh, wait a minute. This is going to be some work. I'm going to have to assemble this? Couldn't you just deliver the furniture already made? I've asked for them to do that. Couldn't you just have it pre-made and have it delivered? You know, you can for an extra $300. All right, I've got the box, and some assembly is required. This is the beginning of more effort and more time and more investment. Those who are bold enough, you're sitting here, maybe you were bold enough to open up the box and go, let's get to it. And you begin to unpack. You begin to unpack, you begin to read the instructions that were written by a second grade masochist. And you begin to assemble something. And there's work involved. Which piece goes with which piece? In spiritual community, we're doing that. We're finding each other. You know, we like to say there's unity. That's not one vibration. That's the unity of many vibrations. And you're finding people in this community that you can resonate with, that meet you at the level where you are, your particular level of interest. That's a holy, beautiful, good thing. You see, unity doesn't mean we all think alike. It means we celebrate the diversity, the different vibrations within the one, and somehow we build bridges of understanding between each other. But you've got to unpack. Here's the reality. You don't last long in this environment that's causing you and asking you to grow if you don't start unpacking your stuff. Work. I've got to unpack that which does not belong here or here in the field of oneness. I have to let go and release that which does not belong, any thought or notion or belief system I've ever held that does not belong to spiritual assembly, peaceful spiritual assembly. And that means even the people that don't think the way I think. That's a freedom, it's a blessing, and it is also a responsibility. We consciously engage in unpacking the stuff of the individual, and yes, there is stuff in the collective. Who's got stuff? And your stuff melds with my stuff, and Jason's stuff, and Rebecca's stuff, and somehow we have a lot of stuff. And together, as ambassadors of love, of kindness and compassion, you help me unpack my stuff, and I help you unpack your stuff. And maybe your piece fits with my piece, and we figure it out together. A lot of people are not willing to put that work in. Oh, too much work here. Too much unpacking. I cannot face my demons. And I understand that. Some people are not ready to face their demons. But I'm saying if they do, this is a great place to unpack it. This is a great place to heal wounds. Spiritual assembly is an amazing blessing, but it comes with a responsibility. And then we do it all. Sometimes when they key a piece of furniture, there's a cord that you have to figure out to get from the light bulb to plug into source, to plug into the electricity. That's what we do here. Through it all, my eyes are on you. Through it all, the good, the bad, the ugly, the screw-ups, the mess-ups, the joys, the celebration, the dances, we are plugging into something higher than our own individual needs, our own individual egos, and our own individual consciousness. Breathe that in. That's an expectation of being in community, is plug in. Plug into the community, plug into the face of God sitting in your seat, LaRon's seat, that's God sitting right there. And I'm going to plug into how God does business as LaRon, even if LaRon and I got to share Friday. Was it Friday we went? We went tubing up with a bunch of middle school kids. I wanted to plug into LaRon really bad. He was the only non-middle schooler that was anywhere near me. But we had a moment on the river, and we laughed. And a child said, "Oh, my God." You remember this? Oh, my God. He kept saying, "Oh, my God, oh, my God." This kid kept falling out of his tube. He was searching for God, I suppose. I counseled him that "oh my gosh" might be a better, more appropriate term in the South to use than "oh my God." But we were unpacking things together. I was unpacking my own challenges with assembling a middle school program on my day off. It's not always comfortable, folks. Spiritual assembly is not always comfortable. But I don't know about you, but it's when I've gotten uncomfortable that I grow. It's when I'm getting kicked from the back end and I don't know why, and something's being called to be unpacked and to be assembled differently. That's when I grow. And so I count it as a blessing. And the only way I got the blessing was I took responsibility for the unpacking and the assembly. That's what we asked to do here. So you've put it together. You've somehow got it right. And you begin to use it. You get to use the spiritual assembly. You get to use the dining room table. Or do you? Anybody ever purchase a dining room table from IKEA and you only use it twice during the year? Why in the world are you keeping that dining room table? Well, so you can fold your laundry on it, I suppose, because that's what they use it for. But the reality is, if you're going to put the time and the investment, the unpacking and the putting together and the assembly, you might as well use the table. And there are people that think spiritual assembly is a convenience store. I have a spiritual assembly. I put the investment into the prayer, the meditation. I stepped in. I began to unpack my stuff and unpack their stuff. And then I only use it twice a year. I'll see you at Christmas. See you at Easter. Or I won't see you on Easter because you're going to talk about Jesus. The reality is you cannot get the benefit of spiritual assembly as a drop-in place. We are not a convenience store. We are a way of life. Spiritual assembly comes with the responsibility of working the program. Yes? I get an amen, Joel? I saw you. I wasn't sure if it was a yes or a no or a well, I'll work on it. The reality is we must implement it. We must use it. Constant opening assembly process. You see, so many of us in New Thought think, well, I unpacked and I assembled one time. Okay, God, where's enlightenment? Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water, assemble furniture. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water, assemble furniture. Oh, that's boring. Boring. Sometimes in New Thought, we're looking for the next spiritual hit. I want the new piece of furniture, but you should put it together so I can enjoy it. And the reality is, assembly is an ongoing process. Unpacking, there's no end to that. It's a journey. It's not about the destination. You get one piece of furniture, then you get another. And if you're not using it, and no minister probably ever said this, then go find a place where you can unpack and make a commitment. Go find a place that does allow you the safety to be that real, to be that honest, and use it, use it, use it. Number 7. In that moment, it's getting to be hard work. I'm having to unpack a lot. I'm having to get really vulnerable here. This is hard. We make the decision to keep the dining room table or return it. It's not of use to me. Through it all, my eyes are on you. This community has had so many iterations. Some of you have been here 3 times as long as I've been here. Some of you are here for the first time. A flow. When you're plugged into God, there's going to be a flow. And some people will return the merchandise. Some will live at the dining room table and have family gatherings around that table. It's not good. It's not bad. It just is. Yes, it's all a part of the freedom of choice. And we honor the freedom of choice in this spiritual assembly. In fact, I've had some of my colleagues call me and say, thank you so much for introducing this new congregant. They've plugged into my church, and they're just a wonderful gift to the community. I love that, because we're not about having the biggest crowd or the biggest church. We are about the biggest amount of growth, the biggest amount of dreams being realized, though with those who are willing to work, who are willing to unpack. You know, I can get up here and give a talk that I think is just so spiritually sound and wonderful, and nobody says a word. But I get up here, and I put my guts, my nuts, and my bolts, and my frustrations out on the table, and suddenly that was the best talk you ever gave. Through it all, our eyes are focused not on the guts, not on the pain, not on the difficulty, not on the coming, not on the going, not on the screws, the nuts, and the bolts, but on God. And that is an incredible blessing, because nobody's coming in here to shut us down because of what we teach. And in this nation, sometimes we take that for granted. We can come together as a potpourri of ideas and thoughts and understandings of what God is, and somehow we're able to do that without somebody coming in saying no. You know, we're often accused of being a cult. Do you know that? I'm sure you've heard it. Oh, that unity is that cult. Cults, the definition of a cult is people who tell you what to think, when to think it, and how to think it. We don't do that. We create an environment for you to think for yourself, to find your way, your unique expression, and your unique relationship with God, and that comes with a responsibility, plain and simple. But some people decide to return it. Let me go help you find a place that works for you. It's all a part of our freedom of choice. And those that choose to stay, I guess that's you. Nobody's gotten up and left today. The 8th step is then you maintain it. You maintain it. The work is ongoing. I'd love to say that you get to step number 8 and then you've received enlightenment. Chop wood, carry water, unpack, and assemble. Maintenance is part of honoring the blessing. It's a continued investment. We have been talking in this community, the leadership level, about something called sacred Ayni, A-Y-N-I, sacred Ayni. Say that with me, sacred Ayni. It comes from South America. Basically, it means sacred reciprocity. Living in the energy of I give and I receive. And I don't necessarily receive from the same person or the same place where I'm giving. I'm opening up as a contributor to the environment of sacred assembly, sacred community. I offer my service. I offer my good. I offer my wisdom, knowing it will come from somewhere else. So we have a 360 view. Let me just be the ambassador of love. Let me be the ambassador of what it means to be the Christ, the Buddha, the Atman, and the Tao, and know that my good will be taken care of. So many people are coming into every environment in this country. We've become a country that's all about, I gave to you, you need to give to me. And we have limited how God can bless us. We have a responsibility in the assembly to have the 360 view. God is happening here everywhere. Everywhere I look, I see the face of God, and I will be open to the good coming to me. That means maintaining my consciousness, maintaining my thoughts, maintaining the words that are coming out of my mouth, maintaining the actions that I am taking, that I am involved and engaged in give and receive. And there's so many people that come to New Thought, and they say, I'm not getting anything anymore. I'm going to return the table to IKEA. That's the moment of choice where spiritual assembly becomes the greatest blessing. I remember there was a member of this church at one point who said that. It just doesn't do it for me anymore. And somebody said, why don't you go down and volunteer with the kids? She stayed for another 4 years because it did work for her, because she got involved in the activity of God known as service. And suddenly, what was going on up here had more meaning because she was in service. Sacred Ayni began to happen, and she saw with new eyes. And the piece of furniture, the dining room table, had many meals around it that were richer and more nutritious and beautiful. And that's true with spiritual community. How many know that ordering things is so easy? It's a very dangerous thing. You go online, and you've got credit. It's got credit. There's no money exchanged. I can just buy this and this and this. It's really fun to do that. And then it shows up. And the farther you go into this exercise that's up there on the screens, the more difficult it becomes, but the more blessed it becomes. The farther you go into that line of words up on that screen, the more blessed is the opportunity of sacred assembly, sacred community. It's not good, it's not bad, but Sarah's song said it. It is well with my soul. Wherever I am, my eye is on you. How rare is that? Breathe it in. It is rare. Now, the word that's often forgotten in that First Amendment is the word peaceful assembly. And we sometimes have lost that. We are about to head into another election cycle. Oh my God, he's going to talk about politics. No, I'm going to talk about what it means to find unity and to have the consciousness of unity in the midst of the storm. I'm going to talk about what it means to recognize that you and I do not have to think alike to find unity. You and I do not have to vote alike to find unity. And I want us to be prepared, to be ready to order oneness, even in the midst of dialogues that could get heated, that did 4 years ago and 8 years ago. Maybe 16 years ago, but it seems to have gotten worse in the last 4 to 8 years. And everybody can go, well, that's why, they're why. That's not unity. Have the consciousness, the eyes, and the ears to seek oneness as a nation and as a community and as a church. This assembly has had so many iterations, but through it all, peace is what's kept us alive. Peace is what's kept us in the flow, moving. It's our greatest challenge to live in a peaceful way. I've been saying all month, freedom requires responsibility. Say that with me. Freedom requires responsibility. Freedom of spiritual assembly requires responsibility, or we don't stand. When it comes to assembly, a lot of assembly is required. It's like putting together a piece of furniture from IKEA. I'm not the most ministerial when I'm doing that. Everybody put together a piece of furniture. My wife had to leave the room at one point. And let me tell you, it's an amazing thing when I found myself to find the place of peace, the place of oneness with all these pieces. That the dining room table, the cabinet, the hutch got together easily, effortlessly, as if there was a power working behind me that I didn't have to force or push. Now she stays in the house, or if I feel myself getting a little uncomfortable, I said, it might be a good time to take a time out. It might be a good time for a Sabbath. Let's get busy co-creating, folks. Co-creating oneness. Even when it's hard to find. Let's get busy co-creating, unpacking our stuff when that person says something and we want to just scream. Let's get busy investing and plugging in the ideas into God for manifestation. I want to talk about my friends Martin and Linda. Martin and Linda, and God rest his soul, he passed just about 6 months ago. Martin and Linda came to the church that I was the music director at in Sacramento, and that church was at least twice the size of this one. Membership of 800 on a Sunday. And Martin and Linda implemented all the tools that I'm talking about today. It was intimidating. We can be intimidating. We think, I used to think I knew what a mega church was until I moved to the South. I remember the first time I went to Woodstock Baptist, and they had a Christmas program. Their orchestra was larger than our congregation. There were 6 tubas in the band. Everybody got to play. But the reality is Martin and Linda were a bit intimidated by the very loud and boisterous environment. And guess what? And Danielle comes up here and says, well, you like our joy? It can be extremely intimidating. Unity attracts about 80% introverts. Did you know that? They come in. I had one guy come to me one time and he says, I love your church. I just can't come back anymore. I'm a Lutheran and I can't hug this much. I don't know if Lutherans hug or don't hug, but the reality, it was so big. It was just too big and energetic for him. He went running out the back door. He did come back a couple times and he sat way in the corner of the balcony, kind of hiding behind a bench. It used to be this. Bob, stand up for a second. I remember people used to say we tricked them. We said, well, just put out your hand. Put out your hand if you don't want to hug. And he says, I'm on to you people. This is what happens. Put out your hand. Sometimes seeking oneness is honor the hand that's out without pulling them in. But the reality is that Sacramento church was as affectionate as we are, and it was intimidating to Martin and Linda. They were overwhelmed. They had ordered, though, the spiritual community. This place had exactly what they wanted. They had put it into the universe. They had been praying for months and years for this kind of home. And despite the overwhelm, they made conscious choices. Say that with me. Conscious choices. That's what spiritual assembly is. Conscious choices. And by doing so, reap the great value of the assembly by jumping in to do the following. 1, they unpacked their own stuff. Okay, I got stuff. Why am I so uncomfortable? Why am I so nervous? Why am I afraid? Let me unpack it, but not run out the back door to unpack it. Open the box and unpack it right here in front of everybody. This is a safe environment to do that. They confronted their own sense of fear with the new environment, and they showed up, and they read the instructions. They learned the system. They paid attention to the system. And they put their toe in the water. Greg Braden has this to say about this. I invite you to read this quote with me. We got it? There it is. Together, to tap the force of the universe itself, we must see ourselves as part of the world rather than separate from it. No matter how crazy the environment, no matter how light or dark the environment, my job as a spiritual assembly is to see myself as part of it. Except so many times we just stand back and say, this is wrong, and this is wrong, and this is wrong, or that needs to be fixed. I'm saying, you're part of it. You're part of it. You're part of the solution. You might be part of the problem, I don't know. But you unpack it together, and we do it as a community. Next, we began to assemble what it could be for them. What are all the pieces in this community? We've got like 37, 38, 39 active ministries in this church. Do you know that? There's things going on. Do you know that we are serving over 300 families every single Wednesday that are they're getting food that would not get food unless we were here doing that? I was surprised. Yes, go ahead and applaud for that. That's the testimony I want to give. I want to go back to Jason and said 300 families ate last week because of what we do here. Do you know that there are families that are right now living on their feet again, that were homeless, that were broken, that were out of work as a result of the work we do with Family Promise? We need to celebrate that. And just as that person, no, it's not working for me anymore, then go to the food drive, get involved in Family Promise, and find God. Plug into something greater. And Martin and Linda did exactly that. They got involved. Our fifth unity principle is the God I know, the truth I know is the God and the truth that I demonstrate. Next quote, please. David Spangler says this. Let's read it together. Some people think they are in community, but they are only in proximity. True community requires commitment and openness. It is a willingness to extend yourself to encounter and know the other. And I don't even like that last word. There are no others here. Spiritual assembly at its greatest, at its most blessed iteration, there's only one of us here. Breathe that in. It's not just standing on the outside. You remember that commercial? I think it was Mervyn's, way back, and there was a lady standing at the door. I think it was Black Friday. Open. Oh, I think I found her. There she is. Open. There's a lot of people looking at the government, looking at the country, looking at the movement, looking at the church, standing on the outside going, open, like it's some kind of magic pill. You people should open. You over there, you should open. And the reality is, as we started this series about freedom, I would much rather stand inside the church and kick the doors open than stand outside trying to get in. That means involvement. That doesn't mean proximity. That means jump into the middle of it. The Garth Brooks song, standing outside the fire. Life is not tried, it is merely survived if you're standing outside the fire. If you're standing outside the church, if you're standing outside the country, open. I'd rather get inside. But then there are people, the new thought, that come inside the building. Okay, I've put my toe in the water. Martin and Linda did it. And they began to recognize that other commercial. And the first service didn't remember this one. Do you remember it was a bunch of business people in an empty room, all laying on the floor, meditating. And they said, don't bother us, we're ideating. Don't bother me, I'm ideating. And the boss comes in and says, what's going on here? Don't bother us, we're ideating. There's a lot of people in New Thought that are ideating. They look at the box, there's a dining room table in there. Let me visualize the table. Let me visualize the bookshelf. Come on, God. It doesn't work that way. God does business as you. Ideating is a part of the process. Desiring openness is part of the process for the country, and for the church, and for the movement. But if you stop there, you're going to be sending the furniture back very quickly. Ideas are cheap. Action behind ideas are gold. Action and movement behind ideas is gold. We could still be today visualizing a food drive during COVID. And by the way, during COVID, we served almost 800 or 900 families in some weeks. Oh, that's a wonderful idea. Somebody should do that. Ideate. Don't bother me. I'm ideating. Number 4, Martin and Linda then became part of the operating system for others to plug in. They became part of the assembly. They jumped into the spiritual assembly to plug in, and they maintained the well-being of the environment by not only plugging themselves in, but by guiding others into the assembly when they came in and went, this is overwhelming. This is too many people. They're too loud. I hope that the people, the introverts who make their way to our doorstep, meet our welcome team. Because that welcome team understands, you're a Lutheran, you may not fit in here. They're going to hug you, and they help you feel welcome. Would the welcome team please stand up so I can acknowledge you? Because I watch the way you treat people. Thank you. It's co-creation, folks, and these people are co-creators. They're doing ministry. They're part of the assembly every time somebody new comes into this room. Cesar Chavez is a hero from my home state of California. Some of you might have an opinion about Cesar Chavez. I happen to think he was a hero. This is what he had to say. Let's read it together. We cannot seek achievement for ourselves and forget about progress and prosperity for our community. Our ambitions must be broad enough to include the aspiration and needs of others, for their sakes and for our own. Freedom requires action. Freedom of assembly requires responsibility. It requires ownership. It requires being plugged in and helping somebody else plug in. I believe it was Martin Luther King Jr. that said life's most pertinent question is, what are you doing for others? That person who went down and worked in the youth ed department found her church again. She found God again, even when it wasn't working for her. This is why she got into a place of service. And lastly, Martin and Linda, they were part of the team of recognizing that sometimes community needs to be taken apart. We've assembled something and the leg is backwards. I've got missing pieces. Something's wrong. It's not standing straight. We find oneness when it's here, and we find oneness when we have to disassemble. That's part of spiritual assembly. Let's take it down. Let's breathe. Let's take it apart, and let's put it back together correctly. Sometimes it's easy to just have a broken system that worked at one point, but it's not working anymore, and God's good enough. This is not a church that is about good enough. This is a community about being the best for your individual life and for the collective life. And sometimes that means remaking it. Each iteration of this community has been a remake, a disassemble, and a rebuild. And that is an important part of spiritual assembly. I'm going to invite the band to come back up. Sometimes you have to go back and you have to fix the errors. Anybody here make errors? No, never. This church is led by a minister who was put into a pulpit who had absolutely no idea how to run a church. I was a deer in the headlights. You know, I shared this with the board at one point. You didn't know this. For my first 2 years of doing this, my routine on Sunday mornings was to come in and go to the bathroom and throw up. Because I am one of those 80% of introverts that was really uncomfortable. And we assembled and we deassembled. We took it apart and we put it back together, but we did it together. Spiritual assembly is why this place is still standing here, not because of any one person, not because of any board member or staff member, but because of the spiritual assembly and the flow of people that showed up at the right time. A little music would be great. Tom, I appreciate it. In the case of Unity North, I want to make sure that you know that all the nuts belong. We are a nutty, crazy, mixed up sometimes, hard to understand at times group of people, but somehow we make it work in this spiritual assembly. I'm so blessed by that freedom to figure it out publicly, standing up here naked and to stutter and to stammer and to say things that are really inappropriate for a minister to say. Putting together a piece of IKEA furniture or trying to put together a talk to move a group of people that was holding on by a thread. IKEA in this community, IKEA, stands for I know everyone is accepted here. I know everyone is accepted here. And there's going to be more periods of remake. There's going to be more opportunities that are up and more that are down. But here we are. We've all ordered right where we are right now. You put an order through a prayer and a meditation, and this is what God provided. Stay for a while. Use the dining room table. Spend some time figuring out why that leg is backwards. Take it apart and put it back together again. And let's move from ideating into investing, because that's where a lot of people quit. Some assembly is required, not me. No, I'm saying some assembly required. Yes, you. It is a divine appointment. Don't waste the freedom that we have to come and be here. The freedom of a nation that we celebrate. There's at least 20 people in this room I know that would not be welcomed down the street at another place. I don't fault them for their belief system, but boy, will I wave proudly the banner that says, I know everyone is accepted. Not just welcome, but accepted. That's what unites us. We're having a human experience that has pain, that has difficulty, that has humility and vulnerability, but we, by right of our consciousness, find oneness. No matter how good or bad it is, let us look for oneness. We honor the Fillmores, we honor the founding fathers and mothers of our nation, and we honor this community that is a symbol of what oneness can be.